Okay, this is Al Claiborne. I'm here on October 13th, 2020 with Doc Clement, who flew as an Army pilot with the Catkillers, a bird dog unit with the 3rd Division of the Marine Corps in I Corps, Quang Province, starting in May of 1968 until February of 1969. And we're going to start out with a little bit of background on Doc and how he got into the Army in the first place. But the main point of this conversation today is going to be about a particular mission where we're going to have some audio from that mission that Doc started. So, Doc, you told me once that your father had been a pilot in World War II. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. He was a pilot flying supplies into Russia out of North Africa. Okay, and at that time when he was flying, the Russians had to know 2 weeks ahead of time who the pilots were, and he would fly and land on the airfield and stay on the airstrip. They would not let him taxi in. Made him get out of the airplane, stand on the wing that hold a gun on him while they unloaded the airplane, then made him leave. And then he came to Winston-Salem and got on with Piedmont Airlines. He was the third pilot hired by Piedmont Airlines.
Yeah, I remember that. What kind of aircraft was he flying? Was it B-17s or
No,
B-24?
he was flying the DC-3 over there. And he did fly B-17 back after the war, back to the States.
Uh-huh.
But he just went right into the airlines and...
Yeah. So the military equivalent was the C-47, is that right?
C-47, that's correct.
Yeah, okay.
And then I was around, airplanes ever since I was a kid, so I always wanted to be a pilot. And I went to college on a football scholarship for a couple of years.
That was at Austin Peay, right?
Austin Peay State University. And left there and got drafted and went in as an enlisted man. And when I took all the tests they give you, said I scored high on GT and wanted me to take the OCS test, and I did, and I passed it. And they said, I had signed up for Warrant Officer Flight Program, and I wanted to go to flight school. And I said, well, I want to go to flight school. They said, well, OCS supersedes flight school, so you go into OCS, and then you can apply for it again. And that's what I did. Once I was in OCS, I applied for flight school again.
So that was at Fort Benning, OCS?
No, that was at Fort Knox, Kentucky.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I went up there for AIT training, the advanced individual, and there was a OCS company up there that I eventually got into.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and then I took the test again in OCS for flight school, no problem. And when it was time to sign the papers, I said, no, let me have all my paperwork, because our Army was 90% helicopter, 10% fixed wing, and I wanted fixed wing.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to Fort Bragg as the operations officer for the 14th Military Intelligence Battalion there. For about 4 months, I got to know my branch in Washington and told them I wanted to go to flight school, and they said, you want the next class? I said, I'll only accept fixed wings. They said, you got it.
So at OCS, you got your commission as second lieutenant out of there. And so then you went down to Fort Bragg. That was your assignment.
Yes.
And then you worked it out to go to flight school. That was at Fort Rucker.
No, that was at Hunter Army Airfield.
Oh, yeah, in Savannah.
Your first 4 months, and then your last 4 months or 5 months were at Fort Rucker.
Okay. Did they, now I know in World War II when they were training pilots, they did sort of primary, secondary, and then sort of tertiary, three phases?
We had 4 phases, and that was the, soloing deal. And I was the first one solo in my class out of there. And then the second phase was, map reading and cross country and night flying, that kind of stuff. And then after we got that, then we came to Fort Rucker, and we were in the multi-engine instrument phase, which we flew the B-55 Baron as our multi-engine ticket and our instrument ticket. And then the last phase, the 4th phase, was a bird dog. And that was transitioned into the bird dog, and also learning supposedly what you're going to be doing going across barriers, landing in cow pastures, this kind of stuff. And it wasn't a whole bunch about what we really were going to be doing in Vietnam, where they did give us maybe one day of artillery spotting and maybe one day shooting rockets, but it wasn't near enough.
Now, were you promoted to first lieutenant at Fort Rucker? Or?
No. I made, well, wait a minute. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, I was.
So you were first lieutenant when you went to Vietnam?
Yes.
And so after you finished at Fort Rucker, did you already had your orders to go to Vietnam?
Yeah, when I finished Rucker, I had orders to go to Vietnam to the first Cav.
Right.
And when I got to Cam Ranh Bay, they said, scratch your first Cav orders, you're going to Dong Ha.
Yeah.
I mean, Da Nang.
Yeah.
And so I went up to Da Nang, and when I was up there at the Black Cats Club one night, I only had a couple of nights there, we had incoming. Somebody stuck their head in the door and said, incoming. Everybody emptied. And I was a new guy, so I didn't know. I said, I better follow these guys. And I went right out and I said, what's going on? They said, we got incoming. I said, what's coming in? And by the time a 122 rocket hit, and you couldn't get me out of the back of that bunker,
Yeah.
But, and then from Da Nang, I went straight up to Phu Bai.
Yeah, right.
And in Phu Bai, I was a single guy. They signed me to the first platoon. Only the single guys went to first platoon, except Charlie, he volunteered.
Okay. So what was the time frame from the time you began OCS to the time that you finished at Rucker and you're going to Vietnam? How many months or a year or two?
It was 6 months of OCS and then 9 months of flight school. Okay, and when I got out of flight school, I had a multi-engine instrument commercial rating that, transferred to the civilian. So once you got out, you had that.
Okay.
And so you're talking,
15 months.
Yeah, 15 months of training. Basically 2 years of training. I went in April of '66 and went to Vietnam in '68.
And so your family were still here in Winston-Salem at that time.
Right.
When you went to Austin Peay, so that's near Clarksville, right? Or
Clarksville, Tennessee.
And that's close to Fort Campbell too,
yes,
right?
Yes, it is.
Was that was being close to Fort Campbell any kind of influence on
no.
going with the Army or flying?
No.
Or anything? Okay. And even though you had been around airplanes all your life, you had never had any flying experience until you got in the Army, is that right?
No, I had about probably 10, 15 hours when I went in.
Okay, all right.
So I'd a buddy of mine here in town, Ed Yarber, had a airplane, and I'd fly with him. So.
Okay, but not a license or anything?
No,
Okay. All right, so we're going to be talking mostly about one particular mission. You started your tour in Vietnam on May the 3rd. How long was it from the time you showed up at Cam Ranh Bay to the time you actually started your first flight with the Catkillers?
I would say it was about a week, because I 2 or 3 days at Cam Ranh, 2 or 3 days at Da Nang, and then I got to Phu Bai, and then I had to be checked out in the airplane, signed a unit.
So you mentioned your first kind of orientation flight was with a Marine backseater named Bob Happy, right?
That was my first orientation on the DMZ.
Right. Now, was that also fairly early, like in May of '68? If you started? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was probably, probably within about 7 or 8 days of hitting Vietnam.
Okay. And so the way you and Charlie were telling me that even though you were based at Phu Bai with the Catkillers, Dong Ha was kind of like the forward operating base if you actually had mission assignments in Quang Tri Province or in the DMZ or even in
the first platoon actually operated the DMZ over to Khe Sanh and then up in North Vietnam. Of course, at the time we weren't operating at North Vietnam. That came a couple of months later when they assigned us to fly.
You're talking about
there.
like July of '68.
Yeah.
So no flying across the DMZ until then.
And the first mission was with Captain Bob Happy, and he'd spent, I think, at least 6 months or a year as a company commander, platoon leader, in combat up there on the Z. And we went out that day, and he spotted some rocket emplacements. In other words, where they would lay some rockets down, to be fired off. The rockets weren't there, but the emplacements had to be dug out. And it was my first mission. I couldn't see nothing. He'd say, "There it is right there," and I couldn't see it, It takes probably a good 3 to 4 weeks of looking at that ground every day before things finally start popping out at you.
And one other thing, in the mission audio that we're going to be hearing later, that's all between the pilot, Catkiller 18 or Catkiller 39. The Marine backseater, he's not heard on this audio. Is that correct? He's got his own communication going on, I'm guessing.
Yeah, my backseat you aren't hearing, but you can hear Catkiller 39's backseat.
Okay.
Because he was asking what is the push, or what we push is a frequency. See, what's the frequency for the ground troops that we're covering? And you'll hear him ask for that.
And all the communication with the ground troops was from the backseater?
Generally was from the back seat. And generally what happens, the back seat talks to the ground troops and handles the artillery. Right. Okay, and the front seat pilot, he mainly handles the TAC air with the bombs.
Yeah, gotcha.
And then we both handle the battleship New Jersey, or the battleships.
Okay. And so you'd go up for a mission assignment. You'd fly up to Dong Ha.
Yeah.
Would you fly the mission that day, the day that you flew up to Dong Ha?
Yes.
There are 2 missions per day usually, right?
Yeah, you'll fly up and you'll fly the afternoon mission generally, and then spend the night, fly the morning mission at first light, and then you'll fly the noon mission also, and then fly back home after that.
So 3 missions
Basically,
on one of those Dong Ha postings.
Yeah.
And 1 overnight. And how long was the flight time from Phu Bai to Dong Ha?
Oh, I'd say probably 30, 40 minutes.
And for example, in this mission, we're going to be learning more about, was it a matter of minutes from Dong Ha to the area?
Okay, from Dong Ha, if you took off from Dong Ha and went and hit North Vietnam line, it would take you maybe 8 to 10 minutes.
And what about all the way out to Khe Sanh? Was that much longer?
Yes, Khe Sanh was probably 15 to 20 minutes.
Still,
because they were the farthest to the west.
Right. Okay, so before we actually get into the actual mission, there are a few for the community out there that's listening to this. There are a few, of course, there's a lot of military codes and jargon that are going to come up, and I just highlighted some of them, and we just want to go over those to make sure people understand. So Dong Ha DASC, that's Direct Air Support Center
Of the DMZ.
And that was manned by Marine Aviation?
Yes, Marine. There was Major Tom Jones, and he had been an aviator, and this was his assignment. He had been flying Fox 4s. He got assigned here, and they control the air for the whole area up there. The DMZ all the way out to Khe Sanh and first part of North Vietnam.
So Major Jones was in charge of that operation there.
Yes.
And then we talked about a code. Go ahead.
Yeah, he was an OIC of Dong Ha DASC.
Yeah, okay. Then we talked about a phrase called Echo Tango Romeo, and that comes up when Catkiller 39er is leaving Dong Ha, taking off, and that means estimated time of return to base.
Correct.
And then you'll hear many times -1 and -2. Go ahead.
Yeah, -1 and -2 is usually your flight of Fox 4 or any type of jets coming up on station, and sometimes you can even have -4. In other words, -2 is usually how they come at 2 ships. So the lead ship is -1, and the second one is -2. And if there's 4 of them, then you have -3 and -4. And that's where you.
These guys, so they come on station, and I noticed several times during the conversations, you always ask them, how long have you got on station? And they'll respond, and it could be a long time or not so long.
Right.
And so they're sort of holding at altitude, waiting for clearance to come in.
You generally, you have a grease pencil and you're writing on your window because you liable to be running 5 flights and you got to write them down to remember. As they check in, you write them on the window so you can give them an altitude to hold at, off the channel 69 there. And they're listening to the mission that maybe the first flight that came in, we're still running it, and they're listening, and they're trying to look down there and see where the bombs are landing. So I don't have to give such a long briefing to the next group as I do the first one.
Right. Okay, another piece of jargon. In one place it says, -1, are you Winchester? What is Winchester?
Winchester means that are you emptying ordnance? Do you have any more ordnance? Okay. And so if you're Winchester, he says, yes, I'm Winchester, then he's high and dry and he goes home.
Okay. Now, I think I got this right from the transcript. There's one place where Catkiller 39er says, who's running the gunships? And the response is Sandbox Mike in the back seat. That's what it sounded like. So that sounded like somebody's call sign for the Marine in the back seat.
Yeah, now that, if I remember correctly, that sounds like helicopters, ships.
Okay.
In there.
But Sandbox Mike would refer to a Marine backseater with Peppy or Catkiller 39 or somebody like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's one that comes up, and I think this is a type of aircraft, but I'm not sure. Spectre 14 Charlie. Does that have a particular meaning?
Spectre 14 Charlie would be an aircraft, but I don't know what kind.
There was a Spectre gunship, but I'm not sure if they were in use during Vietnam. It was like an AC-130.
Yeah, I never used any of the those type of gunships up on the DMZ.
And most of those, I think, like Spooky and Puff, I think they flew night missions primarily, and you guys were all daylight missions.
We were all daylight, and now if in case an airman went down, then you would get one of those up there to for protection along with A1E aircraft.
Okay. There's another code, RTB.
Return to base.
Okay.
That means I'm empty. I'm through with a mission.
And I think I think this is you because you had initiated the mission. Catkiller 39 is coming up to relieve you, and then the quote or the transcript says, "We'll see you later. Bye bye. Catkiller 18 RTB at this time." That's you signing off, so to speak. Here's what seems to be a type of aircraft called a hostage.
I don't remember that.
I guess we could run a hostage in there, couldn't we? Yeah, we can run hostage in anybody that can shoot.
Yeah, I don't remember that. That may have been under Pepe's. I don't know.
Okay. I think this is a type of aircraft. Delta 26s?
No, those are bombs.
Okay. All you have is Delta 26s on the scramble path. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, that would be the bomb.
Okay, I got you. Yeah. And then he says, yeah, we can use the 26 and run it a little further away from the friendlies. I guess it was a higher bomb. Explosive or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. I know what some of this is, but just for the community. Fox 4s.
They are F-4 Phantom jet flown by the Air Force and the Marines.
So you're calling in both Air Force and Marine aircraft.
Right, but the Air Force operated out of Da Nang. Marines operated out of Chu Lai and Da Nang.
Okay.
And the Air Force call sign was gunfighters.
Okay, all right. And these are ordnance types, and I know a little bit about this, but I think you know more. Delta 2 Yankee. Yeah,
those were generally 250-pound chronicle fin snake eyes. In other words, 250-pound bomb, and when it drops away from the airplane, the fins go into the air, not streamline, but into the air to slow the bomb down so the jet can get out of the way for the bursting radius. We had one of our Catkillers take a shrapnel through the windshield and hit his right arm, and flew it back and landed the airplane.
Delta 24 pistol.
That sounds like, well, when you say pistols, it could be their mics.
Oh, okay.
Okay. On the airplane.
Like 24 millimeter.
It could be
something like
22
that.
or whatever, 24,
Okay.
whatever it was, or it could have been a bomb. It's hard to remember.
Yeah, sure.
You know.
Well, that's totally understandable and totally fine. Okay, Alpha 4s.
Alpha 4s, they were A4 jets out of generally Da Nang or Marines flew them too. You know,
Marines and Air Force?
Yeah, no, I think just Marines.
Yeah, and y'all didn't, I think you told me before, y'all didn't handle a lot of naval aircraft. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Usually the naval aircraft were going up north, and the only time generally I would handle a naval aircraft is when they're coming back south, and they check in with Dong Ha desk, and I'll ask, I said, you got any ordnance left? And they'd say, yeah, we got 2 bombs. I said, I'd like to use you, you know.
Okay, so we talked earlier about Delta 2 Yankee, and so here's a phrase, Delta 2 Whiskey.
Delta 2 is
Same
whiskey.
bomb.
Yeah, but Delta 2 whiskey, if I heard that, I would say he's out of Delta 2s.
Okay, all right, okay.
He's whiskey.
And then this comes up again, Delta 2 Alpha, Delta 2 Whiskey, etc. Then there's a Delta 9er. I think is that?
Yeah, that's like, I think, a napalm.
Exactly, that's what I think too. I think I read that in Jim Hooper's book. And here's an aircraft, a jet fighter, I presume, coming in, and the Catkiller says,
Content.
yeah.
Good.
Catkiller says, what's your present angel
Yes.
altitude?
Yes, angel is altitude, anytime you hear that.
And love bug. You want to tell us about the love bugs?
Well, the love bugs were out of Chulai, Flying Fox 4s.
Marine F4s.
Marine F4s.
Okay. And the phrase high drag. So what was the implication of a fighter making a bomb pass high drag? What did that really mean operationally?
Well, what it means is that he could be probably a little bit more accurate with it because he's going up high and coming more or less kind of straight down with the bomb to release it. And with a low drag where he's kind of coming in at a lot shallower angle and laying those out. And generally when you would do that, you'd see napalm. Because you want that to be spread more.
And and then there's another reference to the Love Bug 557. And I think we've talked about the map.
See, that's a F4.
Yeah.
I mean, A3 right there, I think.
A3 the base?
No, the
A4 the aircraft.
No, that's a Fox 4. No, that's a A4.
I kind of thought it was an A4.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time at air shows at Goldsboro back in the day.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that covers most of the jargon type definitions and so forth. Do you want? Let's see. And so you said you think that this mission that we're going to be hearing about was maybe in the summer of 1968, after you'd been in country a couple of months or maybe 3 months, July or August of 1968. Right. By this time, operationally, the Catkillers are allowed to fly north of the DMZ into North Vietnam, where they had not been prior to that. And do you have any other kind of like recollections from this mission or you'd like to tell us about?
Well, just talking about going up in North Vietnam, they didn't come down and they didn't tell us, any intelligence didn't tell us what we're going to be, flying against, whether it was Quad 50s radar control or 3757 millimeter control up there. We didn't have any knowledge. We had to find out for ourselves. But this particular mission, what surprised me about it was so close to Dong Ha. I mean, I'm talking, 5 miles. from Dong Ha. And I knew if we didn't get them then, that I'd be on the perimeter that night fighting. So we were just, we caught them at a bad time for them, because this Marine company had spooked them out of the bushes there, and they had rabbit holes down in there that we didn't know about. And they called me and they got hit, and I came up on station and pulled them across the road to the north. There was a road running east and west, and I pulled them to the north of the road where they had a little trench there and cover. And then as I flew over the area, I noticed some troops on the ground. I said, "You sure you got everybody?" They said, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay, I'm going to make a low pass, make sure." And when I made the low pass, of course, the Marines now in the NVA uniforms were pretty close looking alike. As I made the low pass, I could see about 12 of them stand up and see the white of the eyes. That's how close I was to them. And they were firing at me. The only thing that saved me was they were firing at me instead of in front of the airplane.
Now, I've heard you and Charlie say that from the air, if you saw guys walking along a trail or whatever, unless you knew something else, you couldn't visually automatically say these were friendlies or NVA. Is that true?
That's pretty much true, but you could get, that's why I would make a low pass to make sure what they are.
So was it the fact that these guys were firing at you? Was that what tipped it off that these were not friendly?
Well, I recognize their helmet too when they
pith helmets, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I remember a couple of them didn't have a helmet on, just solid black hair, I remember.
And so we can assume that the Marine unit involved was 3rd Marine Division, but we don't have any clue as to which regiment or battalion or anything of that nature. Yeah. There had been a big battle of a few days in the vicinity of Dong Ha. I don't know exactly relative to the city of Dong Ha or the base where it was. It's referred to as the Battle of Dai Do. But that had been late April, early May of '68, right before you got in country. So this is a couple of months later, so hard to say whether this NVA unit was connected with that or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, because actually they had to send, I think it was a company of the 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines over to Dong Ha to participate in that action. And in fact, one of the junior officers from Lieutenant Lane's basic school class was killed in action during that Battle of Dai Do. So, and then as the mission that we're talking about primarily unfolded, since your part is not the dominant part of the communication on the audio, can you fill us in a little bit in that regard?
Yeah. Well, I was up there, running airstrike, and we were running artillery in between the airstrikes. And the Marines were basically hunkered down across that road, and we had NVA running everywhere in that little area. And so we were bringing in, I don't know how many flights I ran, maybe 4 or 5 that day, and artillery in between. And so it was a pretty well coordinated action, and the Marines probably got a good show.
And you said it's probably the backseater who was communicating with the artillery locations?
Affirmative.
Go ahead.
Yeah, with the artillery and the ground troops.
Right. And even I picked up something in the transcript was they had to be, or you or the backseater was selective about which base would be firing their artillery because of the trajectory. I think there's one citation in there where the backseater or someone is saying you don't want to use this base because if it goes a long round, then it's going to land on the friendlies.
Right.
So you had to pick your base depending on the trajectory and if round went long, where that would wind up and that sort of thing.
The main thing was trying to keep from firing over their heads or in front of the troops. In other words, if you could get the troops off the projectile line, you were a lot better off.
Right, right. And in fact, when the fighter aircraft, as we were talking about earlier,
Yes.
when they came on station,
Yeah.
they also had to be aware of where the
Friendlies
artillery
were.
was coming from.
And then I always gave them a run-in heading, a racetrack run-in heading that's parallel. Never fly airstrike over friendlies.
What altitude, and I guess it may have varied from one like A4, F4, etc. What altitude would they normally be at when they got to their closest approach to the ground during a bomb run?
Well, some of them would be about 200 or 300 feet. And we would be somewhere in that area from 100 feet up to 400 or 500 feet, because we're searching the whole area the whole time, make sure they aren't being flanked or coming in that way. And also, we're also looking for an area we can walk those guys out of, so we can bring in a lift ship and pick them out.
Did you ever have an occasion in any of the flights you were calling in on any mission where one of the fighters was hit by ground fire?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, small arms.
Small arm, like AA-47 and that.
Yeah.
When they
Now-
were at their lowest
yeah,
approach, I
Yeah,
presume.
now in North Vietnam, I don't know, I think Charlie got the last one. Fox 4, he was running an airstrike and he took a hit and went in the ocean. And Charlie directed the rescue in.
Any of these missions that you're referring to where you were involved, where an aircraft was hit by small arms, were the aircraft disabled or did they make it back?
No, they made it back. It wasn't that big a deal with the small arms. But you start getting up in North Vietnam, then I don't know, some of those guys, coming down, you could see the quad 50s on them and the 37 57s and, looked like a beehive, coming up at you and that kind of stuff. But they could have taken a few rounds. When they get back, sometimes you don't know until you get back on the ground.
And they're at a different base from you. And so.
Yeah, and even you could be flying along and take a round and you don't know it until you get on the ground and do a pre-flight.
So I'm thinking about the photographs that are going up as people are listening to the audio. So there's some really nice shots. The photos are all from Charlie Finch, who was... Now, Charlie came to the Catkillers. He was also first platoon with you. His tour started in about July of '68, and he went the full 12 months with Catkillers.
Yes.
Is that right?
Or
his full tour.
In fact, his first mission on the DMZ, I took him up and showed him, around a little bit. But the reason I didn't do a full tour up there, because I was sent down to the headhunters, because we had too many people in the Catkillers from our flight class that were rotating at the same time. They asked for any volunteers, and I'd just come off the DMZ. I figured I'd go look at, I've been to Khe Sanh, been to Ashaw Valley, Hamburger Hill area, DMZ, North Vietnam. I wanted to see something else, so that's what I did for 2 months, and then went to the U-21 flying the generals.
Out in a triangle. And I know when you and Charlie were here a few weeks ago, you guys were talking about the impact of the November 1 bombing halt over North Vietnam. You want to just say a few words about that?
Well, we had no idea that the bombing halt was coming. We knew that we were getting a lot of intense fire about 2 or 3 weeks before, and it was like, are they going to send the whole damn army across the Ben Hai River or what? And we had no idea. Nobody told us anything. We were in the dark most of the time up there, and we did what we wanted to do, and it was more or less a free fire area out there. If they weren't in the base, man, we were going after them, unless we were talking to them, but Dong Ha Des would let us know, where certain areas that they were operating, our friendlies. But it got pretty intense there. Up in North Vietnam, I mean, they were just hosing us down with, these quad 50s, and I swear it looked like a green beehive coming at you.
Now this is before the bombing, close to the time that the
Yes.
bombing halt went
Right.
into effect, but
Right.
still it was
Yeah.
not in effect yet.
We had no idea it was coming. They didn't tell us nothing, and so we couldn't understand all the intensity of the firing, and but they were on us, pretty steady. If we crossed that river, they were on us pretty hard, and it hadn't been that way, a month earlier. Of course they would fire at us up there, but not as intensely as they were.
As though they knew that
Right.
something was coming up.
Right.
And
They were trying to advance as far as they could.
how far north, operationally, how far north could you go in a bird dog of the DMZ?
I would say, well, we had a parallel, and I can't remember what that parallel was.
I don't know if it helps.
There's a DMZ, and I would say, basically about up in this area.
Mm-hmm.
But one time I went way up north and got educated, and didn't do that again.
So the impression that naively I get is that anytime you went north of DMZ, you got fired at
Oh yeah,
vigorously.
oh yeah.
Were all of
Well,
these?
not all the time,
Okay.
but there were certain areas that you knew not to stick your nose into.
Was there so much fire concentrated there because these were strategically valuable locations?
We didn't know they were valuable locations at the
Until
time.
you saw the fire.
Yeah, because nobody told us anything about North Vietnam.
What was the I know you mentioned this Fingers Lake, is that the name
Yes.
of it? And that there were a number of missions in that area, is that right? On
Yeah.
your side.
Yeah,
Do you know what was there?
they would bring artillery down.
Uh-huh.
Their heavy
Okay.
artillery.
Okay. So that was a strategic location.
Yeah,
because of
and
their
what would
artillery.
happen, they would start firing at us. They could fire, 20 miles with those things.
Mhm.
And they would fire on Dong Ha.
Mhm.
And I'd been up there several times where I had to low crawl out to the airplane, jump in, take off, on the taxiway there or runway, just run out there and get in there and go, because the tower, as soon as they incoming, they went in their bunker. So we would take off, and I would strap in once I was airborne going against the guns, because I knew I had to go find those guns. They would not stop firing till we knocked them out.
Mhm.
And at the same time, I'm calling Dong Ha deaths for Fox 4s with some, ordnance to go in there and knock these guns out. And at the same time, my back seat is cranking up whatever he can as soon as we get ready for a fire mission. So as soon as we spot those guns, and you'll see the smoke, come out, and then we could get a pinpoint the target and start knocking them out. But usually they'd bring down about 6 guns at a time.
And then after the bombing halt, your missions across the DMZ stopped as well?
At the bombing halt, yes, we could not cross the DMZ. The only way we could fire on them if they fired at us. So I have seen them cross the DMZ and couldn't do anything about it, except I would have my back. I would call Dong Ha desk and have my back seat open up with his M16 up in the air. Firing, and I'm calling Dong Ha desk. Dong Ha desk, I'm taking fire. I said, Rod's Catkiller, what do you need? And then I would get
You
ordnance.
could call in anything you wanted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I would do it that way, just to keep them from, just completely coming down on us.
Was that change? Did that change in the mission with the bombing halt? Did that impact your desire to get to another part of South Vietnam at all?
Not really. I knew I had, everybody had spent at least 6 months up there, and so, that's
Okay.
basically what I did. And then my Harrison got shot down, and that was about the end of my. He was in flight class with me, and I was at the end of our 6 months, really.
Wasn't that about a week before the bombing halt, something like that? Close to it.
It could be
Late October?
Yes, late October, somewhere in there. He got shot down, And he apparently the only thing we can figure is a 37-57 round hit his left wing or window. And
because I was reading in the book, in Jim Hooper's book, and I thought, because Charlie was involved in the search.
Right.
Maybe everybody was, I don't know.
He
and I thought there was a comment that Charlie was making that on one pass he saw the aircraft on the ground, but then when he made another pass in the same area, it wasn't there.
Yeah.
Do y'all have it? Do I understand that correctly?
Yeah. What it could have been is several things. It could have been maybe the first time he saw up there and he came back, refueled, all that stuff, went back up there. They could have drugged the airplane in the under the trees or something.
Right.
But I know that they had intense fire
Exactly.
on that area.
Yeah.
Because they knew we were coming.
Right.
And Charlie found the guy and found the airplane, and then went back, and then they had moved it, but we never did see any personnel.
Right. And you never saw the aircraft again either.
No,
right?
never saw the airplane.
And
again.
I think the only communication as the aircraft was going down was from the back seater, if I remember correctly.
Backseat, a Mayday call is what I recall.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't there when he went down. I've forgotten where I was. I may have been in Philippines at the snake school over there, 3-day survival school. Something like that. But I don't think I was there at the time.
Yeah. And I'll let you give your perspective on the Bob Hope Christmas tour of 1968. Actually, I was talking to a Wake Forest football player from the mid-'60s. He played with Brian Piccolo.
Yeah.
And he went to Marine Corps not OCS. He went through the basic school, graduated with Lieutenant Lane in March of '67, went to Pensacola, learned how to fly CH-46s eventually, and then went over in August of '68. And he saw the Bob Hope Christmas show with the stars. But why don't you tell us that story?
Well, Charlie really needs to tell the story because I had to fly his mission. He and Roger Bound went AWOL. They didn't tell anybody. Roger Bounds had a cousin that had that was flying choppers up there at a Quang Tree, I think it was. And he and Charlie got together and said, "Hey, I can get us a ride out there." So they just jumped on the on the chopper and went out to the ship and never told anybody. We didn't know where they were. And they were out there at Bob Hope show and just living, like kings out there, with the captain of the ship and the whole bit. They gave them naval uniforms for wearing.
Tell them who the star of the Bob Hope show that year was?
Yeah, Margaret, what's her name? Anne Margaret, yes.
Yeah, there's probably more pictures of her in Charlie's collection than there are of the whole combat.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right.
But I was talking to this fellow, he lives up in Pennsylvania just last Friday, and, I was telling him about the interactions with, he said he had a very good friend who was at Wake in his time in the early to mid-'60s, who wound up being an Army Bird Dog pilot in Vietnam, but who knows what unit or when or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's trying to put the fellow in touch with me, but I don't have his name with me right here. So, but he had seen Bob Hope and Anne Margaret somewhere.
Probably down in Chulai.
Probably, or Phu maybe? Did they come?
No, they didn't come up that far out. About the farthest north, I know that they came with maybe Da Nang.
Oh, okay.
And then Chulai was just south of that.
Gotcha. Now, I think one comment you and Charlie made when we were here a few weeks ago was, and I think it was based on your experience, having been with the Catkillers for 6-8 months, whatever it was, and then going down to Pleiku and then going down to Nha Trang, it was like the concept of the war was totally different.
Yes, it was totally different. When I went down to the Headhunters for 2 months for the rotation, I was bored silly down there. I don't think I even fired a shot in anger.
This is at Pleiku, basic Pleiku.
Around there, Conti M, Docto, a lot of those places, and and it was just kind of boring to me because I was used to the fast action and the bullets flying and the bombs going.
What was that an accurate reflection on the level of engagement out in the field in that area at that time in Central Highlands, whatever?
Well, in Central Highlands, yeah. Well, every once in a while they may get into a battle like at some of the Special Forces camps, and like that, and it may go on for maybe 2 or 3 weeks. But up there on the DMZ, we were in a battle just about every day. I mean, well, we were fighting up there. There was no question about it.
Right.
We lost several guys.
Yeah, right.
And down south, it was like a walk in the park to me.
Yeah, and the one other thing about that time frame, so there's a lot of the bombing halt of November 1 came 4 days before the presidential election, and the presidential election turned out to be very close, even though Nixon won. It was, and probably the bombing halt was a factor in how close it was. I don't know. And then, of course, Nixon became president toward the end of January. Now, you were still up north at that time, at least for another month or so. That bombing halt was not reversed, even when Nixon became president, to my knowledge, until 1972 during the Christmas bombings, as far as I know, but I could be wrong.
I don't know what Charlie can say on that, but he was up there then, and I was down south, and really, you didn't get much news of anything from the States.
Right. I talked with a number of Marines when we did that VMI conference 4 years ago, and they said, well, if you wanted to try to stay informed, you could read the Stars and Stripes, but some of them said that they thought that was fairly, it was giving a particular point of view, I guess you might say.
Yeah.
So they didn't necessarily trust it, even if they read it, to try to keep up with it. So you came, then you extended. So that last 6 months of your extended tour, was that all out of Nha Trang?
Yes, all of it. I extended and went down to Nha Trang to fly the U-21s, which is a basic King Air, and flying. I was mainly Lieutenant General Cochrane's pilot, and I flew a lot of other heavies and generals in that area.
And you had said that even before you went into flight school, you had the idea of becoming a commercial pilot, that this would be the kind of training you would need and all that sort of thing?
Yes, I wanted to be I wanted to fly the airlines, and my dad told me, he said, don't get in helicopters, try to stay in fixed wing. So that's what I tried to do, and he said, try to fly something with multi-engine, And see, when I first went in, my goal in the Army Flight School was to fly the Caribou. And by the time I got out of flight school, they had given them to the Air Force. So I didn't get that, so the King Air was the next best thing.
That was a 2-engine, I guess?
Yeah, 2-engine turboprop.
Okay, all right.
And then I came back to Fort Rucker, instructed in the Bird Dogs for about 4 months, and then about 2 years, and I was flight commander for the U-21 branch there at Fort Rucker.
How long did the Catkillers remain in Vietnam?
Okay, if I left there in December of '69, I was over there about 19 months. '69, they were there 7. I think they left about '72.
They stayed. Okay.
Yeah, they stayed, and they had I think it was Lopsong operation they had
in Laos.
In Laos.
Yeah, in '71.
And they really got their butt shot off over there.
Yeah. The Bird Dogs did?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah, they said it was pretty rough.
I think, if I remember correctly, all of the pilots, helicopter and fixed wing and everybody for that operation were U.S., but the troops were supposed to be South Vietnamese.
Right.
A number of helicopter pilots were lost.
Yeah, they said, I talked to some of the guys that flew that, some of our reunions, and they said it was pretty hairy.
I remember that. I was in college at the time. I remember the news from that. You want to say anything else about this particular mission, or your time with the Catkillers, or time in the Army?
Yeah, basically the most intense part of, with the Catkillers, I spent, 6 months up on the DMZ and a couple of months on the 2nd Platoon going out to Quezon and flying that area. But flying up north was definitely where the action was. Up in the first platoon up there on the DMZ in North Vietnam. I think Charlie and I and maybe 2 or 3 others had 100 missions in North Vietnam and a bird dog. That's just North Vietnam. I don't know how many we had in South Vietnam, and it was definitely get your adrenaline flowing. In fact, a lot of people that would come off the DMZ, some of them hit the bottom pretty heavy, and because they were missing the adrenaline kick, and it was just like being on drugs. Seriously, you'd come off the Z and not go up there for 2 or 3 days, and you have I got to have a kick.
Yeah.
And so every time, believe it or not, you can just about, feel the feeling you had, hear it, smell it. It's very intense, but we thought that was normal, but it wasn't. When I remember going down south, I remember, man, this is a piece of cake. And then coming back from the war, being in the States, you hear a siren or a loud noise, you start ducking.
Yeah, one of my Marine infantry buddies, enlisted guy, was with the 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines. I told him he might have seen you flying overhead.
Yeah.
He came back in August '68, so you've been over there a few
yeah.
months. And he had been he liked to hunt, local game a lot before he went over. And he said after he came back in September or so, squirrel season started, and they went down on the river to hunt squirrel, and he'd hear somebody off in the distance fire a .22, and he'd duck or whatever. So it was not a laughing matter. I mean,
no,
it really
not,
happened.
I mean, not to us, because it was that's what saved our lives. I mean, you are where somebody else is not used to anything, stand up, put their head up, and look around. Well, that's the last thing you want to do. It's just I remember being in a building and hearing a siren, and I ducked under a table, and people look at you like you're crazy. Well, it's your environment.
Now, your dad was still flying commercial when you came back, and even after you got out of the Army, I guess,
yeah,
right?
after.
So y'all must have had a lot of conversations about flying under different circumstances?
Well, a little bit, not a whole bunch. He wasn't a whole bunch of talker and all that now. And because I wanted to fly at Piedmont when I got out, but Piedmont had a nepotism, no father and son. So I went up to Alaska, and I flew the bush for 7 years in Alaska until he retired.
Oh, okay.
And I flew for the Hunt family out of Dallas, Texas.
Oh, yeah.
The ones
Lamar Hunt and all that.
Yeah, that one Kansas City Chiefs. They own the Kansas City Chiefs. And I'd have about 5 camps out in remote areas in Alaska. And I had a Cessna 185 with a 150-gallon Sorensen spray tank on the bottom that I would haul fuel with. And so I would supply those camps with food, people, parts, mail, whatever. And then each camp had a helicopter in it, and we would take 3 bladders and put in each helicopter 500-gallon bladders, and I would fill those up all day.
Fuel bladders.
Fuel bladders.
Yeah, right.
And I would haul between 40 and 45,000 gallons a summer with that 150-gallon tank, and supplying all their needs in all the camps. And then at the end of the season, and when the snow came, we had to pull them all in, and I just pickle my airplane and leave it there. And I had an apartment in Rio de Janeiro on Copacabana Beach, and Hawaii, and Waikiki.
Wow. And
So
then you
I was single.
And then you did wind up with Piedmont.
Yes, I eventually ended up with Piedmont and then U.S. Air, and I'm officially retired from American.
Did you fly domestic routes, international?
International, both domestic. Yeah, I flew Germany quite a bit in the 767.
Were you based out of Charlotte?
Charlotte.
Charlotte Airport?
Yeah, we had a direct flight to, London, Paris, Frankfurt.
Flew to London.
Yeah, you may have been flying with me.
Yeah, who knows?
But I did that. But the most exciting I did was flying in Vietnam, no question about it, because they were there to knock you out of the sky.
Now, did you guys ever, so I know you've had reunions with the Catkillers, and those still go on, don't they?
Yes.
have you ever had not necessarily an official reunion, but was there ever an occasion where you're able to meet or get together with any of the fighter units that you worked with at the time, or anything like that?
No, I think.
I know you met some of them in country, but
Yeah, yeah.
not necessarily after the war or
No.
after your time in the war.
No, not after the war. I don't remember, meeting that Charlie. I think Charlie's met a couple of them, and Ray Carl may have gone to some of the reunions, with the Marines and all. But I never did.
Now, I know those, the 3 Bird Dog pilots that came, Ray, Rick Johnson, and Bob LaFerriere, that came to our VMI conference. They came because they wanted to meet Marines they had been supporting on the ground, but not necessarily Marine fighter jocks and that sort of thing. So that worked out well.
Yeah, there's a guy named Jim Kelly down in Florida that I communicate on, the internet with him. But and he was on the ground, and he'd always tell me, he said, man, when they got in contact, first thing they wanted was a bird dog on top. Because the thing about the bird dog, we could bring more ordnance on the target than anybody in the theater. We could bring in TAC air, we could bring in naval artillery, we could bring in regular artillery. And if it was a big enough target, we could have them B-52 strike in there, which they called arc light, which was classified there. But and I remember the first time I saw an arc light up on the DMZ, and it was coming straight at me, and I couldn't pedal that bird dog fast enough to get away from it. I mean, basically, it's impressive. I mean, for 1 click wide and 3 clicks long, just erupts, and a click is 1,000 meters.
There's a book about the Christmas bombings of 1962, the B-52 Linebacker 2, I think was the operational name. And he talked a lot about the Arclight missions in the South, and that, if there were NVA there, it was going to be very effective. But actually, even if there weren't NVA there, just the sort of the shock and awe aspect of one of those missions.
It's the most impressive
had
thing
a big
you'll ever see.
psychological effect. And I know there's one story of some of these Marines from 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines that were in a battle in late January of '68 at a place called Mike's Hill out near Camp Carroll, right near Route 9. And after the battle was over, late on the Saturday afternoon, they were coming back to Camp Carroll, and they had called in a B-52 strike for what might be left of the NVA out in that area. And I think they said danger close was, I don't know, some large number.
Yeah.
And they said, we got not quite danger close, and that was way too close.
I can understand that. I mean, it's impressive. You just can't imagine the whole ground erupting. I mean, it's, they say it sucks the air right out of the guy's lungs.
Yeah. Okay. Well, any other closing comment before we turn off the recorder?
No, we just had good maintenance people look after our airplane. The bird dogs, operating over there in that sand and dirt and all the time. I understand they would change the engines about every 400 to 600 hours, which is really early in our general aviation view, because we go about 1,200 to 2,000 hours. But over there, and the stress that we put on those airplanes, I've had them way over red line, getting away from fire and jerking them around. I mean, they were well built, and mechanics, we'd come in, they would go over them and look at them, and they did a good job. And listen, man, they took care of us, because we would come in from a mission, and suppose we had a battle going on. Well, we had to get in, refuel, get rockets, and go again. And they'd be right there with us, and they have that, another ship ready to go. We would taxi in, jump out of one ship, jump into another airplane, and take off again. And then they'd take that airplane, refuel it, and arm it up again. because we were the only ones there at the time. Maybe the battle was going on, or we knew exactly where we needed to be up there.
And by the time your tour started in May of '68, the Catkillers had already been operating a couple of years, maybe.
They had been operating, I think, since I want to say 65, 66.
Oh, even 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you very much. It's been very informative, and I think the community will enjoy listening to your comments quite a lot.